A truly rich man is one whose children run into his arms when his hands are empty. Author unknown. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Do me a favor, folks. If you enjoy the show, be sure to hit that like and that subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, I want you to hit that bell so that you never miss an episode. Today, or this episode, is another episode of Dad Talk. Dad Talk is my series to bring on everyday dads to talk about what's important to them. The goal of Dad Talk is simply to raise dad voices, no arguments, no debates. And my only requirements are that we keep it family friendly and whatever we talk about is related to being a dad. Today, Eric Cordova joins me in this episode to discuss going from baby dad to toddler dad. So please welcome Eric as he joins the show. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing very well. How are you, my friend?
I cannot complain, living the life, I guess. Um, you know, when I titled this, it didn't occur to me until I started saying it out loud that it comes I can't even say it, perilously, very close to baby daddy. And I was like,
Mm.
that's but no, it's baby dad. Because you were a baby dad and now you're a toddler dad. So go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody here that's listening.
Well, my name's Eric Cordova. I am alone right now, actually. I am a dad of one. He's 16 months old, but my wife and my son are in New York right now. I'll be joining them in just a few days. And the reason for that, I'll get to make a cool announcement on here, actually. My nephew was just born a few hours ago. So,
Oh, exciting.
introducing a new dad to the fold. So,
Awesome.
yeah, so my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law just had their first. So maybe a future guest to the show. We'll see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I live in Tampa, Florida. Moved our family down here 2 years ago. We actually moved down 9 days after we found out that my wife was pregnant,
Mhm.
and we've continued our life here and started the journey of raising a family in Florida as opposed to in New York, and here we are. Outside of that, I am a construction management recruiter, so I do for a living. So if you are in construction, I'm not saying you should call me, but you should call me. And
Right. Yeah.
here we are.
Awesome. Well, that's great. So you started out as, a baby dad, and if I mess up and I say baby daddy, just ignore me, folks. I swear every time I say it, I'm like, don't do it, don't do it. And the fact that I'm saying don't do it, I swear is gonna make me do it. But
Yeah.
so tell me just like because I know there's people out there that haven't had their first child yet. So talk about your excitement when you found out. Like, was this planned, if you will, or was it just like, hey, guess what? You're gonna be a dad.
No, it was planned. I mean, we
Okay.
we got married in 2019,
Mhm.
so we began the process of wanting to have children a couple years later, and we were able to do that, right? And went through the pregnancy process together, as much as you can do as a incoming father, I suppose, right? You watch all the videos and you read the books and do all that stuff, and I got to be honest with you, it can be a lot if you're not into it, if it's not something you want. So the answer is that we talked about it beforehand. We talked about it when we started dating. I mean,
Mm.
you know, we very much had similar goals as far as wanting that in our lives, and so very much planned. Found out actually right before we were moving down here, like I said, and went through the whole pregnancy in a new place. And in August of 2023, my son was born 3 weeks early. So went through that whole process and began the here's a tiny little human process, right? I I don't know if you want me to go just through that whole journey, but
Hey, it's all about the dad. So,
yeah.
my hope is that other people watch and they get inspired, or if they have questions, or if they're nervous, right? Like the experiences from the dads that come on this show can speak to people. So you are free to go in any direction that you want.
So I actually did a really cool thing that was through our healthcare system, which
Mhm.
was they do like a new dad boot camp.
Oh,
So
wow.
anyone who's having their first child can go to this new dad boot camp. And the really cool part about it is that I've actually been back to it since my son Nathaniel was born. They
Mhm.
invite back new dads to talk to incoming dads to be like, hey, I was in your shoes just months ago. We're all a little bit scared. What's interesting is what you're scared about. I can get into that in just a second, but we're all nervous about something. It's a new experience. It's the fear of the unknown. But
Mhm.
I'm here to tell you, like, I think at that point I was like 6 or 7 months in. Like, it's gonna be okay, guys. Like, it's gonna be really cool. Here's this human child that I have now, and he's alive and thriving, and I'm a part of that, and you guys will be a part of that too. So that was a really cool thing. When I took the class,
Mhm.
you're right before, right? Actually, full disclosure, I was a few days in because my son was early, so I was scheduled for the class,
Mhm.
already born, and my wife's like, "Yeah, still go to the class. Don't worry about it. Go.
Right.
You'll learn something," and you do, and you learn like the things that scare you probably are like the infant CPR and the things that worry you, but you learn also just little things like changing a diaper. You know,
Right.
that's a for a lot of dads, that's like the number one fear for some reason. Oh my god, I'm gonna change a diaper?
Right.
I mean, quite frankly, and I can't really articulate this, but if being a dad is something you want, I promise you it's not going to bother you in the slightest. At least it hasn't for me, like ever. It's
Right.
that part has never bothered me. I mean, we're still in the diaper stage, right? We're 16
Mhm.
months in, so never once has really bothered me to do that because it's like it's part of it, right? So
Right.
um, but I do want to tell people who are thinking about going in this direction, but becoming a parent. The first few months as a dad are hard in the sense everyone knows about it's going to be tough if you're dedicated to being a dad, right? There's not going to be a lot of sleep.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
going to be a major adjustment to your lifestyle. Oh, everyone knows that, I think. But
Well, knowing it and experiencing it though.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we ended up doing, which is really funny. We had to find like a routine, right? And my
Right.
wife and I, who DL, my wife, and
Mhm.
like we have to find ways of going through things. Like we still like we were the couple that we were singing to each other when she was getting her epidural shot when
Right.
she was in labor because we are like we got to do something to like calm our nerves here, and so
Right.
we just started singing. You
Right. Right.
know, musical family. So.
Sure.
But no, the thing that I started to see is that like immediately, right? A woman has a bond with a child when it comes out of her, right?
Mhm.
A dad, it's almost a little bit, I don't want to say phony. I think that's the wrong word.
Mhm.
But your kid's a potato, right? That your
Right.
kid can't show emotion back. So you have emotion of I helped bring this life into the world. But you're not gonna get anything back from it for a number of months, right?
Mhm.
Your kid's
Mhm.
not gonna smile at you till probably 3, 4, 5 months in.
All
Your
I
kid's
got was
not
screaming.
gonna be able to interact with you much for those
Right.
first number of months, and so you're just helping out, right? In a way, right? Um, but we found that being up every couple of hours and doing the feedings and stuff, well, we're like, "We gotta do something." So we started, like, binge watching Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Mhm.
For the main reason of it's a show that you can watch and not at all care whether or not you missed a word or not. Like it's not you're not binge watching like Game of Thrones where you have to be paying attention at 4 in the morning when you're doing your third feeding of the night, right? It's not
Right.
it's just background noise that keeps you awake when I can't believe I'm still awake right now. Like I can't believe
Mhm.
I've been waking up every 2 hours.
Right.
So you need to find something, and that worked for us. Just have and it's about a half an hour, right? The show's about a half an hour, which is a perfect amount of time if your wife is breastfeeding to get out of bed, change the diaper, get everything prepared, be there as a support as your wife breastfeeds. Make sure she's got lots of water. That's a big one.
Mhm.
And and go through the process of breastfeeding those early months, right? So 20 to 30 minutes usually does it, and then you swaddle the baby back up, put him back down, and away you go. But that's your first 3 to 6 months, to different variances of how long the baby's going to sleep.
Mhm.
So you're still in that mode of like, I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, but my return on investment is not high. I don't know. Did you feel like you experienced that as well?
So let's back up a little bit here. On the topic of changing diapers, I actually didn't have a problem with it, with the exception of when he got sick. And it was like, and this is now when he would sleep through the night,
Yeah.
but he was still in diapers overnight. And then he got sick. And then, like 3 in the morning, you would just hear, "Daddy, poopy." And I was like, "Oh, no." And it was only because it was so bad because he was
Yeah.
sick, right? Like, so, I mean, what you gotta do what you gotta do. Like, like, hey, your son just literally called for you.
Yep.
Right? Like, and I'm like, there were times where we would kind of exchange back and forth, like, "Hey, why don't you go this time? Hey, why don't you go?" Right? As he was, not in terms of breastfeeding, of course, but just other times of waking up in the night, we would kind of trade off. We would do shifts. We would do all these different kind of things, right? But when your son calls for you, you're like, "Man, I gotta go." Like,
Yeah.
he literally, because nobody has ever called for me at 3 in the morning to come help them. And even though it was for something unexciting,
Yeah.
you know, it was still kind of cool. But you know, I don't know that I think everybody's experience is different, but I do kind of understand, this, when you're saying like, hey, your kid comes out and they're kind of a potato, and you're like, and people asked me like after a month, they were like, "Isn't he adorable?" And I was like, "No." And they're
Yeah.
like, "What?" And I was like, "He just screams at me, and I'm cycling through, you know, does he need, some milk? Does he need, a diaper change? Does he need a hug? Does he need to, pat on his back? Does he, what is it that he's screaming for?" Because all the screams sound the same at that time, like early on.
Yeah.
Eventually, there's differences, and you're like, "Oh, that's the whatever cry, right?"
Yeah. The hungry cry or the
Yeah.
changing cry.
So
Yeah.
so I totally get this dynamic of like, um, as they get older, and then you get to experience life with them, right? Like
Hmm.
they're calling for you. Maybe they smile at you explicitly. They look at you, and then you do some funny face or something, and then they smile at you. They grab your finger, whatever. So yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you, what else did they teach in that class? I'm kind of interested because I didn't get this class. I got cheated. I have to tell
Well,
my
like I
wife we
said,
need
it
another
was
one so I can go through it.
what was cool about it is it's led by guys who had been through it somewhat recently. I mean, I think the main guy, he was like, his kids were like 8 and 10, so not so far removed that he can't remember those early stages. But yeah, it was first of all, it was scheduled for like way more hours when I took it than
Right.
it ought to have been, and they would just always finish early because I think they scheduled for like 4 hours, and it was really only a 2 hour class.
Mm,
But they would go through, they would go through some, like I said, the end of the class is always changing a diaper, how to have the right things, what you need kind of deal. But a lot of it was just getting you mentally prepared. Like they'd have the people who came back talk about the birth story, right? And what it was like being there with your wife through labor and what that's going to be like. Because these guys are usually approximately a month to 3 months out from having the child, right?
okay.
So, I mean, what's on their mind is labor. Like that's scary. Like you've seen movies and you heard stories of nightmares, and going through labor with your wife or girlfriend or whoever it is a scary prospect, and a
Right.
lot of it is calming their nerves about that and what you can do in support of that, right? Just as a dad and a partner, right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of that, and then a lot of just then what, right? Like then once you get through that, what's it going to be like those first few weeks? How do I know how to do the most basic of things that you're going to do, right? Like, what's it going to be like? Are you planning to, is your wife planning to breastfeed? What's that going to be like? How can you help with that? Is she not going to breastfeed? If I'm preparing to be, to have a formula baby, how do I have the right tools in place so that I can, be in support of that, right? Like, that was a lot of it. There's a little bit of infant safety involved. Like I said, they do a little bit on the CPR stuff just so you're a
Mhm,
bit prepared. There's a full class you can take on that, and you should.
mhm.
I know we took that actually. Again, we had it scheduled and took it when my son was 5 days old or 6 days old. And thankfully, we had my mother in law in town. So, she was able to come with us and be kind of with the baby a little bit while we were doing this thing, and then just give my wife the baby to breastfeed in the middle of the class. But hey, man, like intuition, or inhibition, I should say, goes away. Trust me. Like, if there's one thing I learned early on, whatever feelings that you think you have about like modesty and all this stuff, gone. And you
Right.
start realizing the reality of it, right? And I'm gonna make a little bit of a joke here, but it's
Sure,
how
sure.
I felt and how I do feel. People are like, oh, why is she doing that in public about breastfeeding, right? She should
Right, right.
go and find a little room and do that. I'm like, well, you eat like a slob in the food court. Maybe you should go find a little room. Like,
All
my
right,
kid is a
all right,
lot more well behaved when he's eating his meal. He's just sitting
right,
there being quiet,
right.
you know?
That's funny.
So that's what it is, right? Your kid is eating. This is not
Mhm.
a like a sexual thing or like a whatever. This is eating,
Right.
and believe me when I tell you, I've been to a lot of football games. Not everyone's an attractive eater. Trust
Right,
me on
right,
this.
right.
So that was definitely like a wow. Now that I'm a dad, I think very differently about that particular topic.
That's interesting. like I think when I was younger, I kinda hit the conservative line a little bit harder, and I was just like but not for any particular reason other than, like, this is what conservatives believe, so therefore this is what I believe, right? As I transitioned, I guess, or, somewhere along the line, I cared a little bit less about it because I'm like, if a lot of it is what intent,
Yeah,
like, if 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 we're walking down the street and somebody has a legitimate wardrobe malfunction and they like their clothes fall entirely off, I'm not going to be like flipping out and like, oh my god, I can't believe this, right? Which is different than if they're dancing around totally
sure.
naked and they're like, hey, little kids, what's up? Well, then I'm going to have an entirely different response, right? Because the intent is different. So I
Sure.
and I and I think that actually plays a lot into parenthood because I'm sure that you could attest to this because I know I can, and most every other parent that I've met will say you had your version of what it was going to be like to be a parent, and then you became one, and half those ideas went right out the window,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, I'll never have to carry my kid out of the store because they're going to be so well behaved, right?
Yeah.
And then there's that one day you do, right? Like you end up, or I'll never leave early because I'll have my child trained and they will know to be obedient and that when I'm there, and then what happens? You're putting, you're leaving your cart at, the grocery store,
Yeah.
because you're like, all right, we can't stay here. We got to go. So it does change your mindset quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, we're not quite at that. Like, we're
Mhm.
just entering the toddler phase, right?
Sure.
So, I mean, I would argue the toddler phase is around the time where they're mobile, and I think that might vary for people. But I say that because, look, some kids start walking at like 7, 8 months old, like super duper early. My
Mhm.
son is not one of those kids, but he's all over the place, right? He's crawling
Right.
all over the place. They call it cruising, right, where they grab
Right.
stuff
Yep.
and walk from thing to thing. Very much a toddler, like, was starting to get I had to baby-proof the house. That's how you know you got a toddler, right?
Right.
And, you know, when that starts to happen, you go, "Okay, like, in your house, that's fine. I can control the
Mhm.
variables.
Mhm.
Outside of the house, though, I cannot." So if you, like, if you go to a supermarket, your kids can be grabbing for stuff now, right? You
Mhm.
got them in the shopping cart. You're like, great, I can put them in the shopping cart now. They don't have to be in the car seat. I can put them in the shopping cart, but they're grabbing. They're
Right.
grabbing for stuff. But it's not. It's not up. The thing that you do have to realize is it's not bad behavior from them.
Right.
it's just behavior. They're just curious about the world. Like, that's the thing that I think, as you enter into the shoes of being a parent, people look at it as like, oh, your kid is grabbing for stuff. And I think when it's not your kid, like, oh, that kid's misbehaving. No, they're just, they're
Right.
just experiencing the world, especially at the age that my son is at. He's not at an age yet where, like, he really understands right and wrong.
Mhm.
And that's something that really smacks you hard, is that all of that's learned.
Yeah.
Everything about what you're going to know is right and wrong is going to be learned, and you're the vector that they're going to learn it from first.
Right.
That's a scary proposition in a lot of ways, right? Like, you have to be the one that, if you touch the stove, you're going to burn yourself. The wrong thing to do is to touch it. But they're not going to know that unless they do it, and you don't want them to experience that. You'd
Right.
rather teach them the lesson so they don't have to experience the pain, right?
Right.
But conversely, right, like, and I'll give you a great example of this, and this is just like, my son's very social, just
Okay.
naturally. Like, we call him a little mayor, like, he's the kid when my wife goes to this like mommy group. We get together with the other, the other moms, and then the dads come once a month to, we go to a brewery. We all get together, so I get to
Mhm.
see that a little bit. My kid's the one who goes up to all the other kids, like, he's going up, touching their faces, and, very, very social in any setting, which is great. And here's the other great part about it: has no concept that anybody looks or is different than him,
Right.
like boys and girls, like any different kinds of colors and things, like, doesn't matter, right?
Right.
They're just another kid.
Yep.
Hell, he has no consequence to go up and hug a dog, which eventually, hopefully, he develops a little bit of fear. Like, I want him to like the animals, but maybe not cross boundaries into, like, being rough with a dog you don't know. But
Right.
again, all that is learned, right? Like, he's eventually going to learn that you do need to ask permission for those type of things. It's not inherent. So that's something that, as they have the ability to do stuff, you get to see. So the point being is that, and this is like a deeper thought I've had, is any of the stuff that you would see later, if a kid starts developing like an aversion to, like, to girls, or to, like, to kids of a different, like, nationality, that's on you as a parent, or that's on somebody else that's influencing them. It's not inherent. It's a
Right.
learned thing. And if they're doing things that you would deem bad behavior, it's probably learned from somewhere. It's
Right.
not inherent that they're going to do things that are wrong, and if they are, they're not going to know they're wrong. And if you've taught them that it is and they still do it, then the lesson hasn't truly been learned, right? So
Right.
that's sort of where we're starting to go. We're
Mhm.
not there. I mean, again, the thing that you have to notice at this age, I think until probably a little bit older, is they don't know.
Right.
I mean, they don't even know. Like, my son's only starting to use his words.
Mhm.
Right, he's 16 months old. Usually around a year, they start to kind of develop their vocal cords
Mhm.
to use in a way that makes sense to us, right? The
Right.
cries are communication, but they don't know how to put that into dad or mama, or my
Mhm.
son's favorite cat.
Right. Right.
Loves his cat. But, like, he knows that now. In fact, I just FaceTime with him, and my wife's like, he learned something new. Watch this. She goes, Nathaniel, where's your head? And he goes, head.
Nice.
Like, he knows that now. That's pretty cool, you
Yeah.
know? So that's been kind of an interesting transition to
Right.
kind of see those things manifest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you say that. Kind of piggybacking on what we were talking about earlier, and how kind of, you have your visions of what it's going to be like to be a parent, and then you go on and you become one, and then things change. And one of the I read something, and it was really profound. It was like one sentence. I mean, I read this whole article, but like one sentence really stuck out, or maybe it was two or something like that. But they said, if you're like, imagine that your child just got an ice cream cone, and they accidentally drop it on the ground, and they're going to be crying, and it's like the worst thing in the world. And for us, well, I'm 46. So I've had a lot worse things happen than dropping my ice cream cone. That's pretty tame compared to some of my experiences.
Yeah.
However, if you're 4 or 3, that could very well be the worst thing that you have ever experienced.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was just so profound to really think of it in those terms and be like, oh yeah, for me, yeah, no, that's dumb. Like if you and I are out getting ice cream and you drop yours and you sit down and start crying, I'm rightfully looking at you like, what's going on with this man?
Right.
But if you're 4, well, no, like that is literally the worst thing that's ever happened to you. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then further, I'm talking about right and wrong. I tell this to people all the time. Um, that these kind of things changed my view of children, like drawing on the wall. Every little kid in the world draws on walls, right? Like this is
Yep.
very normal behavior. It's not necessarily desired behavior, but it is very normal because kids don't know any better until we teach them, hey,
Right.
walls are not for drawing on. So when our son drew on a wall, he didn't get in trouble because he did not even yet know he wasn't supposed to be drawing on the wall. So there was no reason for him to get in trouble. Now,
Right.
we did have to clean the wall because we said, hey, we don't draw on the walls. Now you got to help clean it. Right. And it wasn't like a mean, angry punishment. It was just like, all right, that's what you did. So now here's what happens. And then we tell them, like, hey, we don't draw on walls. And when you do, you have to clean it up. And, this is, draw on paper, draw on your coloring books and, other things like that. And that really helped me level set my expectations. And I found that I actually didn't get angry nearly as much as I might think because there were just a lot of things where I said, why would I get angry at that? It's normal, right?
Right.
Like, there's no reason to get angry at normal stuff. Now, if we get a dog and he like stabs the dog with the fork, okay, that's a problem. That's not
Yeah.
what I would consider to be normal. And so now we will have to address that differently than say the crayon issue on the walls.
Right. Right.
So, and I think you're gonna be experiencing some of this, especially as your son starts walking, because that
Yeah.
means he'll be even more mobile. He will, because he'll be able to get there even quicker. Um, and then, quicker means you turn around or you pick up your phone to just kind of take a look at something, and then 30 seconds later, he's, you know, climbing on the bookshelf or something,
Yeah.
something, whatever. So yeah, it's and honestly, it's a fun thing to watch. And even though you're still trying to like, let's not do that.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I experienced that was kind of like that was, so he's not walking, but he does know how to go up and down stairs.
Mhm.
And it happened quickly. And this is the thing that they don't prepare you for. These things happen quickly. Like one day he's not really sure how to do it. The next day he is flying up those stairs,
Yep,
right?
yep.
And so I think I was like doing the dishes and he was next to me and I could see the room. And then all of a sudden I just hear him giggling and I don't see him. He is 3/4 of the way up the stairs, like literally 30 seconds after I was like, okay, I'm gonna focus on cleaning this dish.
Right.
He is 3/4 of the way up the stairs. And but there's like a part of you, it's like, that's really cool. Like I'm proud of him for being able to
Mhm.
do this. And there's part of me it's like, oh holy crap. Like
Right.
I'm not there. He's up on near the top of the stairs. If he so much as misses one, he's rolling back down
Yep.
and he can hurt himself, right? So
Yeah.
like, I mean, now we got the baby gates up, right? That's your cue to get those things up. But
Right.
even so, you don't 100% of the time remember to put them up, right? You got to actually close them physically. So that still may or may not occur from time to time.
Right.
But one thing is like that I realize you got to let the kids do things, and they do have to learn how to make mistakes. I suppose
Mhm.
is the way to say it. Like you can't. I think there's this thing that comes over you as a parent that you want to protect your kids from everything in the world. But if you take a step back, you kind of don't want to. Like you
Mhm.
want them to take risks,
Right.
right? I mean, comfortable risks. Like I don't want him to experience again, like I don't want him to experience like putting his hand on fire. Like I don't want him to
Right.
do that. But I do want him to go up and down the stairs and feel like he can do it confidently,
Right.
even though there is the risk of he could fall backwards. Well, how do we prevent that? Go with him.
Right.
You
Right.
know, give them a time where this is okay to do. Going back to your example, how do you mitigate maybe the writing on the wall? Get them a chalkboard wall,
Yeah.
right? Then this is where it's okay to do it. You can write on the wall, but it has to be this wall, right? And then it allows them to get that out. It allows them to explore and create and all that. But you can do it in a way that is still like good for us, and we're protecting
Mhm.
them a little bit from maybe some of the consequence, right? Like more consequence, I suppose, with the climbing because you fall, it hurts.
Right.
If you write on a wall, it really only hurts me because then I got to paint it, you know?
Right.
Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
really hurt you. Like, doesn't really actually affect the kid, but it affects me. And, you know, I
I mean,
got it because
it
I
kinda
have to,
can if you give them the paintbrush. Throwing that out there. We
eh,
did.
you know,
They're like,
get them old enough and have them help out. I
yeah.
very
They're
much,
not gonna be very good at it. They're gonna paint about as well as they colored, but,
right, right. Well, you got to start somewhere, right? I
yeah.
mean, you know, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I had like certain chores as I got older, they got
Mhm.
more challenging, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, at some point you got to start somewhere. Maybe you know, you help dad take out the garbage, right?
Yep.
That's a good chore. Here, take out the little bags of garbage. He walks with you.
Yeah.
I take out the big bag. He's got the little bag. Boop. And now you understand what we have to do to get rid of the garbage.
Yeah,
Well,
one of
that's
our
really,
approaches was to just include him in pretty much everything.
yeah,
And, like, my wife's a real estate agent, so she would take him out, to, show houses. She would take
yeah,
him out to look at houses because sometimes she does, real estate investment. And, she would and you've seen my son come to, like, many libertarian events,
yeah,
because, I'm just like, "All right, well, I'm gonna go, and I'm bringing my son," and, he just is going with me because, well, we don't have a babysitter. I am the babysitter, or my wife
right,
is the babysitter, right? Depending, we trade off as we need, and to suit what we're up to. But, it just and whatever he the way we approached it is whatever he showed interest in, we just ran with it. It didn't matter what it was. Like
yeah,
stairs, he came over to the stairs and he was barely crawling and he didn't know what to do. So I was like, "All right, let me show you." So I'm literally like going up the stairs with him, showing him how to
yeah,
move his arms and his legs so he can crawl up the stairs. Um, and then like when he was interested, when he kept seeing us plug stuff in, I
yeah,
would say, "Okay, and I would help guide him and show him how to use a wall socket, right? An outlet. And, my theory was just if I show him how to use it properly, then maybe I can mitigate the curiosity of what is this for? Let me just find out and then stick a fork in the, or a butter knife in the, or something metal inside of the electrical
yeah,
outlet.
yeah,
Right. So I was just like, all right, let me show you how to do it. And so we just did, and now it has its drawbacks. um, I showed him how to use a lot of my tools that I felt were safe for him to use, and then the play tools were not nearly as fun because they don't do
right,
real stuff.
right.
I mean, he still had fun with them, but, it was but it was fun. It was fun teaching him, and I enjoyed it. So, and it sounds like you're, kind of similar, like, "You want to learn something? Let's go right on. Let's try it."
Yeah, I mean, and verbalize everything you do
Mhm.
is probably the, you know, again, like it's easy to just do stuff around the kid,
Right.
but again, they're absorbing a ton of stuff. That's something like you start to realize they're absorbing everything. They're not going to retain everything, but they
Mhm.
are taking it all in. That's how they learn language. That's how
Mhm.
they learn how to do stuff. So verbalize everything you're doing. Like, talk to your kids a lot. That is probably one of the best pieces of advice I got and that I could give back.
Mhm.
Talk to your kids about everything. Like, even if it's something simple, oh, he's looking at you and going, "Yeah, dad is he's gonna be eating this sausage, or he's gonna be eating this waffle. This is a blueberry waffle." Like, whatever it is you're doing, it may be the most boring thing in the world or the most simplistic thing, but he's learning all those words.
Right.
He's associating what you're doing because kids want to mimic you, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of times, if you like something, that gets them to like it. So, dad is really enjoying this. This is a steak, like, Oh, it's a steak. And then you give it to him. He likes it. Oh, you like steak. Now he's associating steak as something he likes, right?
Right.
And he's learning the word. The reason he knows the word cat so well is every time he'd reach for his cat, be like, Nathaniel, that's your cat. Do you like your cat? Since he's 3 months old and he had the ability to reach,
Right.
that's that's probably the biggest thing. And we may be a little bit, we all have our opinions on parenting.
Sure. Oh yeah.
We're very much on the boat of it. It's here. It's with the parents and the
Mhm.
people around you. We don't do a lot of like screen time and that kind of stuff. So
Right.
he's not getting much from that, if at all. Actually, the only association he has with this device is that it does FaceTime. That's how he sees
Gotcha.
his grandparents who live in New York, right?
Gotcha.
So when he sees my phone out, he doesn't think, oh, I could play a game. He thinks, we're going to talk to grandma or
Right.
we're going to talk to my aunt or uncle, right? Like, so he gets excited because he thinks we're going to do that. But he doesn't know it does other stuff. And
Right.
we're going to try and shield him from that as long as possible. Mostly because, like I said, I'd rather him be exploring other things that he could do. And that's a choice that people make differently. There are some, videos and programs that do well with kids.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's funny because people tell you about them, right? Like people told me about Miss Rachel. That was a big one for
Mhm.
parents before me. We still have not watched a minute of that in our house.
Right.
It's just not a thing we do. I hear she does great work, but we just don't do it. And
Yeah.
again, that's a choice we made and that we're able to not have to do that, I suppose,
Mhm.
right? Because we've created a life for him that he has plenty of stimulation. We don't have a need to put a screen in front of him
Right.
at this point. And the other piece of that, right? A lot of parents talk about, well, what about when you go to a restaurant? Look, I will tell you, before my wife left for a trip, we had an event, and after the event, we were all hungry, so we're like, we should go eat. When he was a baby, pleasure cruise taking him to a restaurant because all he would do is sleep or do nothing.
Mhm. Right.
Like he was a really easygoing baby, so it was really easy for us to go, he'll probably do very little and we can just eat.
Mhm.
Now he's a toddler. So it was late, which actually played to our benefit because we can kind of let him like crawl along the couch cushion, because it was all connected. But the kid needed to get out energy and he wasn't wanting to sit there and eat a whole lot. Like he ate some, but he didn't want to eat a whole lot. So one of us would watch him as he crawled around on the cushions or on the floor, and the other one of us would eat, and then we would switch.
Right.
This is when I say there's a transition period and it's going to be different. That's probably the biggest thing is like when he's a baby, you put him down to sleep, you go eat a meal together. It's not that easy to prepare that meal. It's
Right.
probably not a gourmet meal that you're cooking at that point, right? When you're on no sleep, you're probably not cooking a 5-star gourmet meal.
Right. Right.
But you can sit down with your wife or your spouse or your whoever and eat while the baby naps. You can do that.
Mhm.
With a toddler, much harder.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
And
just the
and
feeding thing.
it gets more challenging too.
Yeah.
Because like my son he will be 6 in February. And I think we did a good job with screen time.
Yeah.
We tried to use it, first and foremost, early on, we didn't use it at all
Yeah.
because we are like, you got toys, you got mommy and daddy, and you have nobody telling you that there's a thing called a screen that you should be looking at.
Yeah.
So we didn't use it. Um, and then eventually, we might let him watch like a little bit of something as he was starting to get a little bit older. And so we would pick things like ABCs and, you know, pronouncing words and,
Right.
more educational type stuff. And that's
Yeah.
where we generally went. And then eventually he found out that there was like Paw Patrol and some other things that he liked. And we would let him watch that. But even to this day, now he's almost 6, there will be times where, because he loves Minecraft, he loves playing Minecraft. Um, I mean, I do too, so it's not. But there are times where he'll be like, "Dad, I haven't played, video games like all week. I haven't watched TV all week." And then I'll be like, "Yeah, it's not so bad for you."
Yeah.
And when we go out, we created routines to assist. So we would take like crayons, coloring books. We would take some of his toys that he liked. We
Right.
would take puzzles. He really likes puzzles. So we would give him puzzles. And now that he can actually be like, Dad, I would like to watch, my favorite Minecraft show on TV or on YouTube or whatever. And so it's a little harder now because he knows about it. He can ask about it. His friends talk about it. Like you can't hide it now.
Yeah.
And so like when we go out to dinner, we're like, you can color first, then you can eat, and then after you're done eating, then you can watch, the tablet or something like that. So we just kind of we've kind of shifted into, okay, there are limits, these things first, and
Right.
then you get to use these things. So that we at least try to give him some healthy habits, even if I
Right.
don't have them.
Right. That's the thing. Like, you try to find it, but like I just described, right? Is we were like, oh, our kid was, and everyone has different experiences with
Mhm,
their kids.
mhm,
There's no like one way. So for us, baby stage he was pretty easygoing. Toddler stage, he's got a ton of energy.
mhm.
And again, you're at a restaurant, you don't ever picture yourself when you have this easy baby being the guy chasing the kid all around the restaurant, but here we are doing it, right? And
Right.
it's like no matter what you do, you're gonna have to be prepared for times like that. And he's not the thing that you got to be reminded of. He's not being a bad kid.
Mhm.
He just has a ton of energy. He's not wanting to sit still to just eat. Like he ate a little bit, and plus, a kid who's not yet 2 years old is not like us, where we can just shoot the breeze while we wait for our food to come out.
Right.
He's hungry,
Yep.
so you're giving him whatever snack you have to, because whatever, and then by the time his food comes out, he's not that hungry anymore. So it's like you're always fighting these interesting battles when it comes to that stuff, and that's been probably the most interesting part of making that transition is like your experience, the things that you used to see and go, oh, they got a tough kid. My kid's not even a tough kid, but you
Mhm.
are going to experience that stuff that you've seen
Yep.
from other kids. Like you are, and it's just because kids are learning what they're capable of, and they
Right.
don't know how to channel stuff. They don't know how to sit still. Like that's not that's a learned behavior.
Mhm.
As we discussed before, like we're sitting still talking on a podcast, like that's a learned behavior. But
Mhm.
even with that, I'm a naturally antsy person. Like I want to get up right now, but I'm enjoying the conversations. I'm not going
Right.
to, but like I do. He's like me in that regard. He wants to always be moving. So
Right.
I'm like, he's me. He needs to move around. And here I am. A couple years ago, I would have looked at that person, the kid on the floor in the restaurant, and be like, oh my God,
Yep.
And now I'm the guy. I'm the guy, and my son is the guy. And,
Yep.
but it's all part of it. And I don't, you know, the thing to keep in perspective is your kid's not doing anything wrong. There's no reason to be angry with normal behavior, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of, I think that's where you and I have landed as is kind of a really
Right.
important thing, is to not get frustrated with normal behavior,
Right.
right? Like, and to not even get frustrated with things that happen within parenting, right? Like,
Right.
you know, your kid falls down. He's learning how to walk. Or he's cruising or something. He falls down. I came home one day. He put himself in a box, or my wife was playing with him. He was in a box. Got
Right.
excited, wanted to see me, pushed the box over, fell onto his side, hit his shoulder,
Mhm.
started crying, hurt himself.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you could freak out, or you can go, okay, this is normal. Like he fell
Right.
out of something because he doesn't know how to get out of a box.
Mhm.
My cat barely knows how to get out of a box. I mean, like he doesn't know. And so he hurt himself, but he's not dying, right? Like he hurt himself. He's going to be fine. And that's another thing. Babies are resilient. Toddlers are even more resilient.
Mhm.
Like they're going to fall, they're going to hurt themselves, they're going to cry, maybe. I mean, they're going to cry initially if you don't give them I know this is a really hard thing, but unless it's like really bad, if they just fall, if you kind of ignore it until they show signs of pain, they're not going to cry.
Right. No, that's true.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. My little brother, he's 12 years younger than me, and one day he was just a little kid. I don't remember how old he was exactly, but he was a little kid, probably still in his toddler stage, maybe maybe kindergarten at most, but he was still, a wee little guy. And he was running across the room and he tripped and he fell. And I think he hit his head on the corner of the wall. And he literally he fell, he got up and he turned and he looked to see our reaction. And we were like, and we at first were like quiet, and then we were like, ah, ha, ha, and then he started laughing.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was like he took his cue on how he should respond from us, not from the fact that he literally just ran into a wall or fell into it or whatever, whatever happened. And so it's
Right.
very interesting. And my son is mostly that way. I jokingly will say that he's a little bit on the delicate side.
Okay.
Um, so and I don't like, yeah, we could say that's learned, but I think there's some personality in this particular thing
Sure.
where, he's, yeah, and which we gauge it, right? We're like, hey, you're fine. Get up and you'll be fine. Dust yourself off. You'll be okay. And if it's something a little bit more significant, then we'll of course address it more appropriately,
Right.
with a hug and whatever. So, but it's just a fun learning experience. Sometimes it's scary.
Yeah.
There are I've had some moments where I've been like, flipping out, but for the most part, it's been a really fun experience. Would you say the same?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, of course, there's a moment here or there where you're genuinely like scared of something or it's hard. We all have those moments, but overall, it's been great. I mean,
Mhm.
but the thing that I would say to that is it's great because it's something that I was looking forward to being great,
Yeah.
right? I struggle with and I know people that end up having kids that maybe were 50-50 on it,
Mhm.
or it just wasn't really like maybe one person in the couple was more excited about having kids than the other or
Right.
whatever, right? And I don't know that they would feel the way that I would, knowing this is what I wanted. And like I said, but I think the thing that I wanted to bring to the table when I brought up the idea of talking about baby to toddler, right?
Mhm.
The first few months as a dad, as much as I wanted it, they're not that fun. Like you're kind of
Right.
just again, you're there more for probably for your wife more than anything else
Mhm.
because you're not developing a bond with your son like it's a one-way street. I'm
Yep.
bonding with him, but he doesn't really understand what's going on,
Right.
right? I'm holding him, but but he doesn't know that, right?
Right.
When they start to recognize that there's other people because and I learned this in one of the classes. The first 3 months are like sometimes they call it like the 4th trimester, and the baby still sees themselves as an extension of the mother.
Okay.
So they don't even know that they're a separate human from the mother because they're just always
Right.
latched onto the mother, and especially if they're breastfeeding, right?
Right.
They don't get that. Months 4 to 6, they start to understand that they're a separate person from the mother, but they're not even sure that there's other people.
Right.
Really, after 6 months is when they start understanding that there are many people in the world, and if you're doing the dad job right, you've been the second person they've seen the most, right?
Yep. Yep.
You should be, you
Yes.
know. I mean, maybe you have a nanny or something like that, but I mean, heck, you should be one of those people that he's gonna no, this person loves me, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that is really, I think, when you really start to see that bond, and it really starts to get fun as a dad.
Mhm.
Other people's experiences may vary. For me, that's how it was. Like
Right.
I really started to understand that when he starts to smile at you, when he starts to want your attention, and they
Mhm.
do. Like they look at you for attention, right? And I want to do stuff. And look, we have our things. I wrestle with my son. That's a big one
Yep.
for us.
Yep.
I'm a big WWE guy, and we do moves. He pins me every single
Mhm.
time. He's really good at
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But but like that's when he was 8 months old, and he like get excited. I'd pick him up. You know, I could like slam him down onto the bed, and then I could fake it and then put him on top of me, and I'd count the pin, and he'd get really excited,
Right.
and like that's when it's like, oh, this is fun, you know, and like the thing of you come home from work and you say like you're home and your kid, like there's no better thing in the world for your kid, and there's no better thing in the world for you.
Right.
Those are the moments where like now you're like, this is really fun. We're
Yes.
doing this right because we have that bond. That moment is the most important moment of the day, other than the first moment where he sees mom when he wakes up. Right.
Right.
This is his other most exciting moment where I get to see my dad for the first time. Like that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's honestly, we could spend hours talking about all the fun that there is. There's just, it's weird to me that, it's weird to me that there is even such a thing as fatherless homes. And I don't mean like, I mean, separate from the issue of divorce per se, but I
Right.
mean just like a child that doesn't have an active father, because I'm like, this is a damn blast. Like,
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of fun, and even like doing his schoolwork and stuff like that. It's just like everything is just fun. Like I'm getting to, you know, learn stuff myself a little bit here and there. I get to teach him, kind of see how well I know it. We get
Yeah.
to have conversations. Like now he can actually come home and have conversations like you were talking earlier. Hey, once upon a time, it's just you and your wife talking and having a conversation, and the baby may, probably be sleeping. And
Right.
then, but there is a point where they're just as able to have a full on conversation. I mean, it's not the adult conversation, but they're still able to talk about, their friend, what they did, in their favorite video game, the tower that they built with their blocks, or,
Yeah.
whatever, show you a drawing, get mad at you and draw the words mommy and daddy and then X out daddy because he's mad at you. Like they yeah, that happened. Like there's all and he was I think I told him no for he wanted something and I said no, and he got mad and he was like, "No more daddy." And I was like,
Yeah.
I was trying not to laugh. It was so funny because I'm like, because I know he doesn't mean it. Like he's 5. He doesn't, he doesn't know what he's saying.
That's hard
And
though, when they do something you know is wrong, but you know it's also funny, and you
right.
really have to hold back. It's like, yeah, I don't want to encourage you to actually do this bad thing, but it's like when your kid curses when they're young, right?
Oh yeah, we had that one
Like
already.
you think it's hilarious if it's done around nobody else, but you really need to stop it because then they're gonna do it in a setting that is not good.
Right.
So you're like, I as funny as it is, I really cannot encourage this behavior. Like
Right.
that's hard.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of it, like you were talking about, like, how do you respond when they get hurt? That's where they take their cues. It also, that how you respond when they do something that they don't yet know is bad. I think that plays a role in how they go forward. So ours did say the F word a while back. It was probably about 3 months ago or so. We're all sitting there at the tables, me, my wife, my son, and grandma. And he was just like, I don't remember the sentence he said, but it was something like, he's just like eating and he's like, "Yeah, that's really effing cool." And my wife looks at me and I look at her and he's continuing eating. And he's like, not, it was like he just said, "Yeah, that's really cool, dad." Like that's just the same. And I was like, "What'd you say, bud?" And he was like, I was like, "Repeat that." And he was like, "Yeah, that's really effing cool." And I said, "Oh." And I said, effing is an adult word. We call them adult words. I don't call
Yeah.
them bad words.
Right.
I mean, he does because that's what he learned at school, but I call them adult words. I'm like, those are adult words. You get to say them when you're an adult.
Right.
And I said, so don't say that word because it's an adult word. It's not for you right now. And okay, dad. And then he doesn't say it again. He's extremely well behaved. So we lucked out in that sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, it's just a fun learning experience. You're learning your kid, you're learning what they like, you're learning how to get them to do what you want or
Yeah.
don't want. So it's just a lot of fun. Hey, I want to switch gears here because we're getting close to the end of our time. So what I like to do for every dad that comes on the show, what I've been doing is I will find some question on one of the dad groups that I'm involved in on Facebook or somewhere on social media where some, dad has asked a question. And then I get to just present it to you, and then you give me your thoughts on it. So I'm gonna put that
Okay.
up on the screen here. And let's see, there we are. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read this. And it says, everyone is mad at me. I want to, and this is old, by the way. This is from from late November. Everyone is mad at me. I want to buy my 6, 8, and 9-year-old BB guns. I have been teaching them firearm safety, even with their Nerf guns. But half my family says no, and the other half says yes. I want to teach the safety aspects with air rifles before firearms. Bad idea for Hanukkah gifts? Question mark. They would only be taking them out with me, not by themselves. So, what is your thought on this, Eric?
It's amazing that you picked this of all things because we've actually had this conversation with these exact lines drawn in the sand in my family.
Hmm.
Because I have family that is in New York. I have
Hmm.
family that my aunt and uncle live here in Florida. And naturally, their politics tend to differ
Hmm.
based on that a little bit, right? And I tend to lean toward supporting the guy, and I'll tell you why. My cousin is 12 years old. So, and he's been shooting BB guns and all this kind of stuff since he's like probably 5,
Hmm.
right? Like, and he was taught gun safety at an early age. He's at an age now where my uncle's offering him to go to the range to start learning how to shoot a real gun. And he is hesitant because he understands and he has understood from a young age what that means.
Hmm.
That this is a much more powerful gun. It is deadly. Because he was taught that about a BB gun that it's dangerous and you only do it in the right settings and so
Hmm.
forth. He already knows that. I would very strongly argue that it's better to teach your kids stuff at a young age so that it's inherent in their knowledge rather than they have no idea what it really is and what it does and what it
Hmm.
means, right? Think about when you think about a lot of these incidents, right? And I'll talk about two different types. What are the most two common types of like you hear about with firearm deaths? Accidental in the home and like mass shooters, right? Those are the two that get talked about in the news.
Hmm.
Both are somewhat preventable by teaching kids at a young age. The firearm deaths in the home is usually a kid whose parents has guns, but the parents haven't taught them enough of how to properly fear them, and they don't lock them up properly and do the right things. But if you teach your kids to do that, that we lock these up, maybe you don't even show them where they are. Look, daddy's gonna go put away the guns, even if it's a
Hmm.
BB gun. When you're older, you will see where daddy locks it up, but he locks it up so that nobody can get to it unless we really want to take it out, right?
Right.
Then they know, oh, this is a thing that I can't just go and use. It's not like my toy that's sitting there on the carpet, right?
Right.
Like this is different. And then, you have the kids who just don't know and they're not locked up properly. These parents have not taken the time to do what's necessary to teach their kids a healthy fear of it, and someone accidentally shoots somebody, right? They're playing with it. They think it's a toy that has no consequence when it has a major consequence.
Right.
Shift to the other side, and mass shootings tend to be people who glorify it and don't see it as a thing to fear. There's other factors too, but like the point I'm bringing up is I see it anecdotally in my
Hmm.
cousin. He has a good, healthy fear of guns. And he told his dad, when I feel like I'm ready to do it, I will tell you. And then his dad's going to teach him even further. But he already knows trigger discipline. He already knows never point your gun anywhere but downrange. Do
Right.
not take the safety off unless you plan to fire. Like he knows all that stuff already.
Hmm.
So I don't see an issue with it, but I saw all this stuff go down in New York where they would literally pull Nerf guns from the shelves because parents would complain.
Right.
I mean, I had Nerf guns as a kid. I had water guns as a kid,
Right.
but now I don't think they have them in New York because there's a fear of if they learn guns, they're going to love guns. And I think it's the opposite. I think if you learn about them and you understand them, it might be a hobby of yours, but you're going to understand how to use them safely. You're
Yep.
not going to be, The first time you get your hand on a BB gun, you're not going to shoot someone in the butt. You're going to
Right.
go, okay, like I'm 6 years old and I get to shoot this thing. I only get to shoot at targets. And if
Mhm.
anything else is in my way that's not the target, I don't shoot this gun.
Right.
So I'm on that side of it. I always think over educating your kids about things is the better path. And
Yeah.
that's what we strive to do. I'd rather him know all the things going in and be able to make his own decisions as to what he wants to do. That's where
Yeah.
I land.
Fair enough. And basically, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
So my son has a cap gun, and he has explicit lessons to not point that at anybody's face. The squirt guns, the water guns, we're a little bit more flexible with those because water and little boys and
Yeah.
but we do put rules around him. I've had him clear a firearm before he comes in the house, basically make sure it's empty out of water.
Yeah.
We and I teach him, like, he doesn't get all of the lessons because he's never been on a range, so he doesn't really know what
Right.
downrange would mean. But as far as the handling that he's going to be doing, we have worked out and said, this is how you appropriately play with this particular toy. And then as we step it up, one day he will get a BB gun and we'll say, okay, now we have additional rules because this is something yet different. Eventually he'll maybe go to a range like you were mentioning, and we'll say, okay,
Yep.
there are yet other rules that are building on top of the ones that you've already learned, because this one is yet even more dangerous than the one that you had before that. So
Yep.
that's our approach. All right, sir. What I want to keep you too late. Um, Give us some final words, and then I'm going to set you backstage and close the show.
Final words are simple. Love your kids. Like it all falls into place if it comes from a place of love. Like that's the best thing that I can tell you because it's the thing that drives me every day. I
Mhm.
wake up in the morning and I go, all right, well, I got to go to work so that I can come home to my wife and my son.
Mhm.
That's what drives me. That's what motivates me. If you have that love with you, it's going to drive all the decisions that you make. Because when we discuss those hard topics, it's, well, I love my son and I want him to thrive in what we do with him.
Right.
That's the driver of everything. And don't be afraid to experience it all. Like get your hands dirty, get whatever dirty, because that's where the fun happens. Like, listen, I'm like you. I had my first son and I was 38 years old. It's a little bit different, I guess, when you have your kids like super duper young and like sometimes
Mhm.
you're rolling around, you're like, my back hurts.
Right.
But you
Right.
know what? I'd rather my back hurt rolling around with my son than for any other reason. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
love your kids. Do stuff with them. It's the best thing I can tell you to do.
Awesome. All right, I'm gonna set you backstage for just a second. We'll close
Yeah.
out the show. Thank you
Thank you.
so much for joining me today. It's been my absolute pleasure. All right, folks, thank you for watching. I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. By the way, as you heard, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk. Dad Talk is my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. Make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. And while you're there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. Last but not least, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. Enjoy the weekend. But for now, I'm out.